Yeah, it was a pretty cool car, and I still like the looks of it. And I'm just wrapping up the IROC OBS pickup, and it's been a long time coming, but it's just been so much work to add all these IROC details to it. And so I'm building the dash right now, so it's basically half IROC, half OBS.
OBS Talk. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. How about the one and only OBS Mark OBS Oja. Mark, what's up? What's up, dude?
Hey, Ronnie, Happy New Year. Nice to see you.
Yeah, great to see you in face to face. And so we just yapped on the phone for an hour yesterday, and now we actually get to look at two just beautiful men. Just beautiful. Yeah, we're so
Stunning,
beautiful.
stunning works of art.
Uh, Notice we're not asking anybody else. We're just asking one another. But so what's you wrapped up 23, you were up at SEMA. Man, you had a busy 2023 with everything that you have going on. And are you glad 23 is over? Is it one of those kind of deals where you're just constantly just grinding?
And I am actually glad 23 is over. We bought another building and we had to move. And I've actually got all my cars and trucks under one roof. And as pleasant as that may sound, it was a nightmare. It was, it took a lot out of me. This will be the last move. And then we've been working on the building, and then our good friends Joe and Carson built that badass OBS and brought it down to SEMA. And so we spent a couple weeks with them prior to SEMA, wrapping that truck up. And, he placed top three in the Battle of the Builders for Young Guns. And so that was kind of the highlight of our, at the end of the year was getting that truck done and getting it down there. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's been really hectic, and it feels a little calmer now, which is nice that it's laid back a little bit. So it's time to get back into the podcast and interview some cool people.
Well, I guess the question of the litmus test is really if you moved everything, um, is it such a pain, and are you at full capacity that you're not going to be looking for more trucks? Or where's the breakover where somebody says, well, I'm always still going to look for trucks whether or not I buy them? Or I wonder, at what point is it like, I don't even, it's like drinking too much alcohol. You're like, if I look at another bottle of Jim Beam, I'm going to throw up. Do you ever get to a point, or are you to a point where you're like, all right, I cannot look for any more trucks because I have TMS too much shit?
Well, I definitely 100% have TMS. There's no doubt in that whatsoever. And everybody that's come here just kind of looks and shakes their head and said, "You're crazy." But then situations happen. I think I was telling you about a month ago that a local wrecking yard, the guy passed away, and another wrecking yard bought it, and he called me, and there was, let's see, I think there was six OBS trucks and three third gen Camaros. So I went to look at them, and I'm there and I'm thinking exactly what you're saying. I'm thinking, I don't need any of this. None of this needs to. Then he gave me the price. And I'm like, load them up, boys. Because it was, there was I couldn't say no to it. Like, no rational person would say no to it. I paid more to move them than I paid to buy them. And, so it's kind of an interesting thing because in my mind, I keep saying no, but then I keep doing it. So but it's got to stop at some point. But I'm actually driving a third gen right now, a 25th anniversary Camaro, and it's fun to look at, but they're not really that great a car. They need a lot of work. So,
Well, and I think the standard changes, right? So because if you think about, so 25th anniversary, obviously 67, I'll have to do the math, but what is that, an 92 or oh 02? What year is 25? I'm trying to add the
92.
92.
Yeah.
So a 92, that's my senior year. And that is obviously, is that the last year of a third gen? Or is that the first year of a
Yeah.
fourth?
No, that's the last year of third. So then it
So
goes to the fourth, which,
yeah, no, I don't. I think those are freaking horrible. But so you get the last year of a third gen. Uh, Obviously we know they put V6s and 305s, and I assume if it's a 25th anniversary, I would think it would be a 350, and I would also assume it'd be
it's a
throttle body.
350.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we're so spoiled now because when you think about, like, my son just bought a 2019 used, and it's got a 6.2 with a 10 speed in it. So
Yeah.
yeah, lot different when you think back 30 years ago, or at this point, 32 years ago almost, to think that, yeah, a 2019 with 6.2, I don't even know what's he, 6.2 stock, 435 horse. Who knows what else he's got going on? 10-speed transmission. He's got paddle shifters, a little different than the old 92. But point being, if you go back to 92 and you get in this Camaro, you probably thought it was pretty badass.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool car, and I still like the looks of it. And I'm just wrapping up the IROC OBS pickup, and it's been a long time coming, but it's just been so much work to add all these IROC details to it. And so I'm building the dash right now, so it's basically half IROC, half OBS. So all the OBS mounting points and gauge location and stuff like that, everything else IROC. And so driving the third gen was kind of on purpose so that I could, see how that was for ergonomics and stuff like that, and change a few things around, make it a little more user friendly. So it's actually been a little bit of a project at the same time as and just my obsession with driving old junk, basically. So
I think that's everybody. I mean, it's funny how you get those creature comforts of a new 2019 or 2023, and it is nice, but something about just driving around old junk that just kind of takes you back.
yeah, I think too, the part of the fun is still looking for stuff. Like I look every morning. I have a couple of sites I look at, and just check around to see what's out there. And sometimes you can still steal a deal. Like they're still out there if you're looking. And we bought a red Crew OBS original paint, one owner truck 2 weeks ago, and I don't know why it was on Facebook Marketplace. I don't know why nobody bought it. Like, I don't know if they couldn't find it or the guy wouldn't answer or whatever, but like it was a smoking deal. Like it was prices from 6 years ago, and red original paint, beautiful. Has these big goofy chrome running boards on it, so the sides of the truck are flawless. No stone chips, no dents, nothing. Perfect interior, and so they're still out there. You just got to keep looking, and usually by the time they hit the internet, they're not really that good a deal anymore. But we've found quite a few just in the last 6 months, so we're stacked up.
Yeah, too. It's like, babe, I'm losing money by not buying this. It's like I gotta buy this. I have to, and that I know they still exist. One thing that I would wonder, because I love third gen Camaros. My brother had an '88 RS T-top. I would love a third gen T-top car. Probably will never really get one because I'm too just balls deep in trucks and everything else. But when you think about an old I don't know, maybe just an old Chevelle Nova, a little bit of Camaro. Chev GM had same door handles, same AC controls, same, so, the stuff was funny when you look at an old car, you're like, well, that's the same as a truck. And you're like, well, no, that's the same as the car. And they use the car parts for the truck parts. When you think about a third gen Camaro, the first thing I think about is sitting in my brother's, and then the little torque screws on the dash, and the dash are kind of the same as like an 88 to 94. Is there a lot when you break into a third gen Camaro? Is there other things that you find that are similar to a CK OBS truck?
Not a whole lot. Like like the door handles and that are like some of the stuff's the same, but it is. You're right. That interior deal with the Torex screws and everything's weird because some of them are fake and some of them are real, and so you can tell if somebody worked on it because they tried to put a screwdriver onto the fake ones and they're plastic. Um, it's what I find mystifying about a third gen is the assembly procedure that General Motors used. And like for example, if you want to take the mirror off, you have to take the door panel off. Well, the wiring goes all the way down under the dash into the behind the kick panel. And so you got to pull the sill plate and pull the carpet up, pull all that out, disconnect that. It's like, really, you couldn't move that plug like 2 feet the other way.
Yeah.
And like the window regulators are like an OBS, the window regulators are riveted in, which I hate because if you got power windows and you're going to rebuild all that stuff and make it nice, you got to unrivet them and rivet them back in. It's not complicated, but it's a pain in the ass. And that and you can't get the door handles off with the windows up, and you can't get the door handle off with the window down. So so the window has to come out. So guess what? You're drilling out rivets. But so there's things like that. I think the OBS is actually a little easier to work on. And I don't know, it's just got more familiar with them, but it's everything in those third gens pretty packed in there.
Yeah, I think with an OBS, you've got a little bit bigger door, a little bit. Well, I think left to right, lengthwise, a third gen Camaro door is probably longer, but not taller. and definitely not as thick or wide. So when you get your hand in there, and I always like, and you can tell a guy when he's on door duty because for me, I kind of do have like Popeye forearms. My forearms are just gouged, they
Gosh.
especially in a square body, you get in there and, you're constantly, and you look at your arms and your forearms and, you go into work and people are like, did you just get in a fight with a cat or what? And you're like, no, I'm just working on old doors trying to get in there because it's so limited. The other thing about a third gen is, I guess, unless a OBS is slammed, they're just low. So you're
Oh
really
yeah.
really bent over, you're in, you're out, and yeah, it's there was a post the other day on social media watching some guy get out of I don't know what car it was. I really don't know if it was a Corvette or, something that was low. And it was just hilarious watching this, 65-year-old guy kind of get in and out of those cars. And I'm 50 and it's still not even that much fun getting in and out of a lowered car. Dropping your ass down in is one thing. Lifting your ass, back up and out is totally different.
Well, that's the thing. And to get in those cars, like I'm 6'1", almost 6'2". So getting in one of those cars is a little bit of a challenge. And you got to do it like a street rod, like a 32 or 33. You got to put your ass in and then swing your legs in. And then it's easier just to tuck and roll out of it than it is to try to stand up at some point or another. But it's amazing the love those cars get, though. Everywhere you go with that car, someone has something to say about it. And it's just a white 25th anniversary bone stock, nothing done to it or anything, but they still evoke a lot of emotion out of just general bystanders. So that's kind of cool.
So if this isn't Camaro talk, but if the first gen is going to be, the most popular, right? I just got to think the first gen 67 to 69. Is it sequential? Is a second gen split bumper the second favorite? Is, what would you say first and foremost? What's your favorite? What's your top three in order, year
So,
wise?
well, for me, I would take second gen as my first pick. The
Okay.
like the split bumper and actually I've had Steve do a couple renderings. He did a couple things that they're hard to describe, but basically think of a 69 Camaro, but with a third gen roof on it, roof and quarter panels. And so it really streamlines that car. So Steve did a little sketch of that, which was kind of cool. So I've kind of been fixated on that and I actually went and bought a car to do it with. And it's sitting here too because I couldn't get that thought out of my mind when he combined those two cars. It's
So a
69 front
first,
and rear.
okay, so a first gen front and rear, but with a third gen top.
Top. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And he just did a loose pencil sketch and it's incredible. You look at it and you just think, yeah, that works. Like you know, that's a cool concept. So we gathered up a lot of the stuff to do that, but it's obviously on the back burner. So I would say second gen, and I would actually go second gen, third gen, and then first. I don't know. Like we've built a bunch of 67, 8, 9 Camaros, and I don't not like them or anything, but it's just they're the 32 pickups. They're the C10 of the car world. It's like it's hard to break the mold there. I think that's why I liked Steve's deal so much was that it breaks the mold of just another pro touring Camaro. Uh, so that's cool. So that's how I would rate them. But I think the thing with the third gen is just the fact that it coincides with the OBS. I think that's why we're all in that age bracket. Like, at that time, a car was still more money than a truck. A truck was still cheaper.
Yeah.
And so, you had to really be stepping up to get a car like that. And, not very many people I knew got those. That's why the 5-liter Mustang was so popular because it was cheaper and
Yeah.
faster. So,
Yeah. A Fox
but
body is definitely probably one of the only Fords I would really not turn away. That an OBS Lightning, a Fox body, but again, they're the same era, right? So that's that high school, junior high, high school, college for me. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd turn away a 69 Camaro, but I'm with you. I think it's been, played up so many different times that you've seen it really every which way but loose, and you don't really see that much. And then when Roaster Shop did that split bumper, probably about 4 years ago, SEMA, that thing was just, oh my God, just so mean, so ornery. And I think Dale Jr.'s got a really rad for early split bumper that's pretty bitchin' too. So it's funny that a second gen, especially a late second gen, is kind of a little bit of a bastard. I don't think they ever got quite the love, but man, those early split bumpers just they're pretty powerful.
I agree. I think once they went to rubber bumpers, it was all over. It's kind of like the Corvette for me. Like they end when the chrome ended on the bumpers. That's kind of where I stopped looking at them. But yeah, actually, Dale Jr.'s car got sold, and Wes Rydell owns it, who owns all the Chevy dealerships in the
Oh,
U.S.
okay.
So it's in Wes's collection now. So it's being well taken care of over there. It's that's an incredibly cool environment to have a car in. So it's nice that that car is still around. And you know, Detroit Speed built that. It was a landmark car in its day. Uh, you know, it was a high end pro touring car and that. So I think it's like the OBSs too. Like now, like I want to see. You know, hopefully, if anybody's got something they want to send us or they want to talk about it, like I'd like to see if you're building something crazy. Like, you know, reach out to us and let us know what you're building so we can follow it with you because you know it's we want to see different stuff. Like, yeah, it's okay to put an LS in it and put some wheels on that, but is anybody else building something nuts? Like, that's kind of the, you know, just taking it and going in a little different direction with it. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, perfect. Right. I think one thing that makes the OBS truck so special is you can still take an OBS truck. Let's obviously just say a single cab shorty. You do a 4.6 5.7 on it and you pick the right wheel. You can pick a safe wheel, but you pick the right wheel. You take the molding off, your bonus if it's a GMC, whether or not you're color matched or whatever, but you really can still build those so easy and they look so good, timeless. But then if you do something crazy, it might not look as good or it might take us a little while to warm up to it. But it's cool now that we're to that phase where it's like, okay, now we want to see some shit. We want to see some, you know, even the Phantom Dually. I haven't seen anybody come out and say, "Oh, I'm converting this extra cab. I'm going to put." Whether it started as a dually or I'm going to add flares to it, or I should say, dually fenders, and I'm going to make it a Phantom Dually. I haven't seen that yet, and I'm wondering when we're going to start getting back to some of that crazy stuff that will cycle in the perspective of we saw it, you know, 30 years ago with the trucks. People were doing stuff that we thought was crazy, and I think you know we are need to be getting to that point where we're seeing these trucks become crazy again, but crazy radical.
I agree, and I think we got to get back to all the metal modifications, like the you know, like the all the work to the front bumper and the grill. You know, there's a like people don't realize like even if you look at our Suburban at Brickyard, like there's a ton of work to that front end, and a lot of people just kind of walk right by it. But that's a good thing because that means it's not done poorly because they have to take a double take at it. But you know, all that work originally on the bumpers and even taking a little bit out of the roof, like if you stay around 2 inches, you can solve a lot of glass problems and it makes a big difference how the truck looks, like the metalwork on the cowl panels and then everything on the bed and the tail lights and stuff like that. I just like to see all that metalwork come back and have people building stuff out of metal again. And I think this year we're going to have the battle of the pace trucks is what I think we're going to have. I said because we've got our good friend Jeff finishing up his pace truck, and then we've got the boys over at is it
Twin
Twin
State.
Cities Twin
Twin
State Rod
State.
Shop?
Yep, yep.
Yeah,
Justin and
you know they've
Eli, and their chassis was out of Dino's for that truck,
yeah.
so we had them on the pod. And you know, Jeff is now for the audience lethal C10, but he CX. He is teamed up with Heart Fab, which he does on all of his builds, and boy, that truck, it should debut at LST 2024. So, you know, we're looking at about 5 weeks from now. I feel bad because he was going to debut it at SEMA, I think 2022 initially. Then it got bumped to LST, and then it just keeps getting bumped. But right now, everything is looking like it should be LST, you know, 2024.
Yeah,
But you're right.
cool.
The only thing I think, and obviously we are involved in that a little bit in the sense that the Twin State guys were kind of being ornery about it in a good way, and they were having fun and calling out Jeff and his truck. But I call that truck Indelicious because it's delicious and it's indie, so Indie-licious. But his truck, they're going to be different styles, so it will be interesting to see if maybe we should do a little who did it better, you know, as the season progresses and we get into SEMA 2024 and it's like, okay, these two trucks are done. If the Twin State guys are done by then, and see where that kind of shakes out. But even some of the stuff they do, you know, it was really nice to see some of their showcased work at Dino's. They came out and they did a really good job of some of the different GT stuff, some of the bike stuff. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, where we're seeing the generational stuff of really my childhood, the skateboards, the BMX bikes, the culture, the radios, the Alpine decks, the trucks, the CKs. I don't even care if it's a Ford OBS. I don't care. It's a bring it back attack. And really, a shameless plug. That's what the reunion is all about for the truck show that we do here in Chandler, is just bring it back. We don't care. Bring it back, have fun doing it, and go back to that time. We should even let third gen Camaros in, and I think in 2025 we are going to look at bringing cars in. I think it'd be I love the high school parking lot perspective of the show and just life really, and so I think that's something that we really we want. We just have a limited capacity. So if we can get that second parking garage to the south, and we can take on a whole nother, we might do like, oh, this is the car garage and this is the truck garage. I just like to mix it up, like again, the high school parking lot. When I was in high school, we could drive to school. We had open lunches. We did not have assigned parking. So you would just try to find a spot, and it was just mayhem all the time. Now these kids have their own, coveted real estate. They get charged for it. Hell, they'll even let them paint something on it. I could see somebody having like an OBS sign on it, and you could do all kinds of cool shit. But we want to take it back to some of those good old days.
No, I agree. I think that's a good idea, and I'd be all in on bringing cars there because we're still car people too. It's just we don't talk about them as much as because we're a truck podcast, but it's still anything that's in our youth like that. It's funny that you talk about the old days like that because when I drive to the shop, I have to go through that. You cross over from Arizona into California, and you go through that fruit inspection station. They want to know if you have anything weird. Who knows what that really is going on there. But it was funny because I was driving the Beltec tribute truck the other day, and I rolled up, and the guy looks at me and he goes, and he just straight face, he just says, "Those were the days.
Yeah.
That was it."
Yeah.
Smiles. He says, "Have a good day." I go, "You too." And that
Yeah.
was like he's just happy to see it, and it's just kind of funny when you think back, like back to the Camaros too. I think they just evoke such good memories out of people because we look back and think about how simple our lives were back then and how easy things were. They really were. They were
They
a lot
were,
easier
they
than they
were.
are.
And it's funny now because we're in this position now, it makes you realize why the old timers, you think about, to me, it's the good guy generation. Even if you're thinking about Boyd Coddington and his age of generationally in the car industry, you're like, well, that's why guys wanted to have that style, because those were the days. And for us, it's the trucks, the SUVs, the Blazers, the Broncos, the CKs, the third gen Camaros. Go down the list of all the different cars that you could think of that were mid 80s to mid 90s, and it's popular again. And I don't think that recipe changes much. I tell guys all the time, take what was popular with time you were 14 to 25, and add 30 years, and it's going to be popular again. It doesn't stop. People have that emotion to the chill days, the high school days where you didn't have to work 1, 2 jobs or 80 hours a day for or a week for yourself. But yeah, you just kind of look back on that as good times, and eating 99-cent frozen pizzas, and life was good.
Well, I think too, like for me, it's kind of this last year's been a little bit pivotal too because I'd like to see, as much as I'd like to see metalwork come back and all the modifications come back to the trucks, but the other thing I'd like to see to come back is quality. And growing up and watching guys like Boyd and California Street Rods and SoCal Speed Shop and all these guys that we admired and we went to visit and went to see their shops and everything was so nice. Everything was painted and gloss cleared and color sand and buffed. And I don't know. I think this whole patina, I don't mind the patina, but like the real ones, but I think the patina and the satin clears, and especially like my number one pet peeve, bedliner. If you've got bedliner, put it in your work truck in the bed and then see you later. I don't want to talk to you. Like if you think it's okay to bedline the inside of the fenders under the hood of a truck and bedline everything, like that's not a custom truck. That's all that is a low end excuse to not finish stuff. That's all that is. And there's going to be people who disagree with me, and that's fine. But it's like to me, that's always just been a cover up. It's like so I'd really like to see all the gloss stuff come back. The IROC truck, we actually did the frame gloss white, and it's a white truck and it's gloss white, and there's going to be people that don't like it, and that's fine. But it's anybody can just go powder coat a frame, but like start putting color back into stuff. Start hanging around Steve Stanford, you know.
Well, I don't think you're wrong, especially when you think about the bedliner. It is there'll be a fun debate and or argument, really, because when you think about it, it is an easy way versus the alternative of a highly detailed bed or obviously under your hood in your wheel wells, so on and so forth. I wonder, and this would be a great debate for you and whether it's a paint and body host, which we know that's your forte, and those are fun to listen to, but if it comes down to why people don't do that, and I think it all just comes down to not necessarily time but money, and the money is based upon the time because the labor is so expensive now. The products are way, I was talking to a painter the other day, a very high-end painter down here in Phoenix, and he said, "Man, I can't even touch my product for what I used to be able to touch my product." And people have to understand that, we're not, this isn't, even though it is an election year, it does come down to petroleum-based products and it comes down to shipping products and how they make products. And it's like, dude, he was like, dude, I can't even touch the product to paint a car for what I used to pay. So then you think about the labor, which I think in Phoenix, I don't know what it is up in Havasu, but right now the labor used to be 85 and now it's about 125 an hour in Phoenix. So I
Yeah.
think that the labor to go back and see what a guy used to pay back in the days, let's just say, in 89 for, high-end metal work, high-end paint and body, high-end it's just people are that die, those be like, there's no way I can afford that because it's going to cost so much, unfortunately.
Well, I think I agree to a point, but where I have a problem with it is when you see somebody go buy a brand name chassis, 50, $60,000. They get a set of wheels made, 10, $15,000 on the low end now for a nice, you can spend that, you can spend 15 grand on a set of wheels with no tires without even trying. And they buy an LSA or they buy a twin turbo motor or a 632, and so it's just funny to me where it's gone into where they're okay to buy all these parts and they'll spend $150,000 on parts. But then the difference between, you know, not bedlining and bedlining, if it's five or six or whatever the number is, 8 grand, then they're like, oh no, don't do that. Just bedline it. And like, I don't get that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand that because if you're going to spend them, but that's the other problem with how the industry's kind of gone a little bit too, is that a lot of this stuff's turned into cookie cutter stuff where, oh, we got to have a chassis, we got to have an LS. And then, they put that, like some of the creativity is gone because a lot of those things are, to me, are just kind of cookie cutter things where I don't need to look at it like, you know, uh, what did you do that's different? Like, what did you do that evokes a thought out of somebody? Where, like, when I look at a truck, I want to see something where like it makes me want to go over and take another look at it and see what else I can find on it. And that's kind of missing a little bit in a lot of the these builds. And it's just my own opinion, but it's what I noticed looking at cars and trucks.
Well, no, you're absolutely correct. It's the recipe that is already established. Like, okay, well, what chassis? We're going back again, 1989. There was no that was not part of the recipe. There was no pre-built chassis that you could just order and you had to work with what you had. And so I think that's what, again, you go back to that time and you're like, oh, this guy did this on the stock chassis. Oh, this guy did this. Another reason why we love the throwback trucks or we love this, sport truck survivors and the survivor series, because you get to look at what was already done and you have a higher admiration because you're like, well, I just saw what that guy did over there, but old Tom did this back in the day. Like this was legacy. This was amazing stuff. And yeah, I don't know where we'll be in 5 years from now. And I guess you just have to kind of, you have to do what you love, do what you like for the audience, do what you love, do what you like. The other thing too is in the Chev world, I get, some of the Dodge guys, especially a buddy of mine, Umberto from Vulcan. He's just always crying about the Chev guys having you can build a truck out of a magazine. Nobody has to fab anything. Nobody has to do anything. Heart Fab makes the inner fenders for you. This company makes this for you. This company makes this for you. And you're like, okay, but what do you want me to do? You want me to spend, the time and the money to be different, to do this, this, and this. And some guys do, and some guys will because they want to be different. But you're absolutely correct. You're not wrong at all. It's the recipe, whether it's cookie cutter, it's a great problem that we have. the aftermarket industry is kicking ass. I mean, even like our gauges, look at Dakota Digital, look at the options that they have. Look at
Yeah.
now look at it, when we started this podcast and you think back of like one of the first interviews, there was nobody was doing the coilover stuff for the 88 to 98s. Now you've got QA1, Beltec, Ride Tech, the React. I mean, there's so many companies. So it is a balance of who do we are we so happy that we have all these options. And I guess for me, as long as ground effects don't come back, but I know you're doing the tribute truck, so I don't know that I'm that big of a fan of ground effects and tweed, but they probably will come back. People love those. I don't know what the name of it is, but usually it's a step side with factory style kind of ground effects. And I wouldn't even call them ground effects. They're almost like fender extenders.
Like
Yeah.
over,
A little bit of Caballero,
yeah,
right? So
like
you
a
get
choo
the,
choo,
yeah, like a
yeah,
choo-choo
choo choo
custom, but it's like
customs.
this Caballero. For me, it's a little Spanish cowboy guy rolling around in his little Caballero truck. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, but sorry, sometimes they have really cool paint jobs, and I could see somebody getting a hold of one and slamming it or lifting it and just I don't know. I don't know what the world is that we're gonna see here in the next 4 to 5 years when it comes to all of these trucks, not even just the OBS trucks, but it's gonna keep cranking, that's for sure. Because I did hear a pod one time, and the guy said, I think it was Tim from Classic Truck Performance, but he was saying, "Hey, as long as these chassis companies keep selling chassis, and everybody else is going to keep selling parts, because either there's a lot of chassis buried in the desert somewhere, or a lot of trucks in garages that are getting built right now." I don't know, because sometimes you're like, "How do these companies keep their lights on, but we don't see this many new trucks that are coming out?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it takes people a while to get them done, and hopefully too, like even if I think the ground effects and the tweed, for example, like I think those things can come back, but they need to come back in with modern day um, techniques and procedures. Like you could incorporate some tweed into a truck right now and actually have it pretty badass. And I think you could do the same with ground effects. Like if you we 3D printed a bunch of stuff for the IROC truck, and so you can take something and modify it. You can say, hey, I want these to be a little thinner. I want them to be a little thicker here, or whatever you want to do. So I think there might be some opportunities there for people that want that stuff, that we can make that stuff using current technology a hell of a lot easier than we could back in the old days, where you were kind of stuck with it. But I think just the level of personalization is what I'd like to see. I'd like to see more people just personalize their trucks a little bit more, and not be so worried about following the crowd. Even like paint, like people look at, we try to crazy paint everything, and I don't care if anybody likes it or not, but it's just you know I think back to like Pete Santini laying graphics on those OBS trucks like day after day after day, like one after another, and they shipped all those trucks in those Impala SS wagons. They did this conversion wagons, went all to Japan. Like more trucks went to Japan than were sold in the U.S. And they just kept doing these crazy paint designs and everything, and it was nice because you could see that truck coming. It's like, oh, that's so and so, and it just gives something some personality, I guess. I hope that comes back. We were hoping it would come back in 19 when we did it, but it's it's a little slow on the rebound. And so maybe I'm 100% wrong.
Well, I do think that when you do something crazy like that, it will give you an individuality. Whereas if you don't, then you're kind of lost on it. The other thing with One World Connect through social media is even like if you think about the Pace Dually, right? So Preston has the Pace Dually. I think he was the first one to do
First one.
so yeah. And then you see Yeah Buddy do his, and you're like, well, now there's two Yeah Buddies, or there's two Pace Dualies, right? There's only one white Pace Suburban, which is yours. But then you think about Preston had his dually. I mean, his dually was at the reunion last year. And then I think some of the people, so the One World through social media, it kind of changes things, because you're like, oh well, I can't do that because it's already been done. And I kind of laugh sometimes about that, because I'm like, it's okay. We can have 5 of these things across the whole country, but people are like, oh no, it's got, he already did that, or that's got that, or that's got that. Where back in the day, it was like, well, dude, they made 500 of those trucks and they never were in the same zip code ever again. But yet people, because of social media, and it wasn't back in the front page of each paper, right? Nobody had any concept of, Well, and I know Craig over in Texas has got the same truck. You think about the I forget what they call it, but what do they call it? Fleet blue. I love that color, and you just don't see it, right? But now we're starting to see like, well, there's six of these guys have them. They have these fleet blue single cab shorties, or an extra cab, or maybe a dually, and that's a part of it where you hope, like with Carson's truck, for the audience, Young Guns, SEMA, kind of a maroon with some crazy Steve Stanford graphics on there, and really, one of one is it's going to be one of one. Nobody's going to change that from him. So I think that we will start to see that more in the OBS stuff because of that old school lineage and people wanting to stand out and be a little different. I mean, we saw a lot of 454 SSs. Now we're seeing a ton of indies, and we're gonna, start to see what's next. Is like, okay, well, they ran out of the special truck, so now we're gonna make our own special truck with that retro rad graphic, and we're gonna make it our own.
Well, I think that's the cool thing about what Carson did because he's only 26 years old, and he's got a supercharged LSX in that, and a stick. So it's not an automatic truck; it's a stick, and it's got some billet inside of it. And then Steve designed the killer graphics that are actually inspired by a funny car that he designed in the 70s. So there's some history there with those graphics, and I think it's one of the first trucks that's kind of a crossover truck where it's somewhat retro in some aspects of it, and then it's got forge line wheels on it, which are they're not your average everyday wheel. They're a extremely high end wheel, and they work well with the drivetrain, but they're kind of a nice mix with the paint and the graphics. So I like the fact that he was willing to go a little bit of a nod to the past, but a full blast to the future with the drivetrain and everything. So I hope that we see more of that. And the thing is, like, you think about that truck when even it was at SEMA when it was in the Battle of the Builders portion there, like all you had to say to somebody was just go look at the Burgundy OBS. They knew what truck it was. Like it was easy to find that truck because of the graphics that are on it. If it didn't have those graphics, it still would have been cool. But then why would you walk over and look at it? Because it would just be a burgundy truck on wheels.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perfect example of how well a little personalization can really make your truck stand out. Like that truck made top three, like of the Young Guns. Like that's amazing for an OBS. Like and not a pro builder, and like he just did that truck and went out on a limb with a lot of it, and it just works so well. I've actually got the truck; it's still here. I've got it right here, sitting in the showroom.
Well,
So,
hopefully you can bring it down the reunion. I hope that we see more scallops and stuff because we've been seeing them on trucks that were survivors that are left from, unmolested, still original paint from, really the 90s. I do hope we see some people do some funky stuff with some scallops. Take that OG graphic styling and then bring it in, modernize it 30 years later, give it that new drivetrain, give it that new stance, obviously the crazy exhaust, and then just throw some crazy paint with some scallops, just something that we've seen, but we've seen it different to where you're like, oh shit, damn, look at that, what he did, and look at that, and look at that. And I think we're still seeing that when somebody resurrects a survivor truck, but I don't know that we've really seen it honestly much compared to maybe just your tribute truck. When your tribute truck came out, that made us all do that. Maybe it was a little too far ahead of its time. But I think that we're ready. We're ready to see a lot. Like you said, we are ready to see a lot more of that.
yeah, I think so. And we're working with House of Color right now, and they've been really good to as a partner with us. And we've got one that's painted that's pretty crazy that people are going to like when it comes out. And not sure when it's going to debut yet. Still needs an interior, like still needs a little some fine tuning in that. But and then we've got another one. We've that's got this one that's got 480,000 miles on it. The speedometer's broken on it. And we're just going to go full out crazy on that one too. And we've been collecting up parts for that, but we're going to paint that totally crazy and see if we can upset everybody with that one too. So I really hope to see some really colorful trucks this year. It would be nice to see some Easter eggs pop out like they used to in the old days.
Yeah. Easter eggs, perfect. Get some of those pastels out there, get some different colors, some radness, some just craziness. I think we will. I don't know if it will be necessary that we're going to see them done in 24, but I think you'll start to see them pop up more on social. And then in 25 and 26, they are going to hit the streets and we're going to see some really amazing paint jobs that are going to come out. And we will see that for sure because that is a lineage to that era that we love so much. So, um, well, something else to really get to that we want to make sure we talk to Mark about today is things at Truck Talk Media are changing a little bit, and really, there's only so much that Ronnie can do. So, one of the things I'm super lucky and stoked is that we are going to have leads for each pod. So I like to look at it like editor in chief of a magazine. So Mark is going to be the man. So we were a little bit I guess we were spoiled with Mark in 2021, and then 23 you got really busy and you're back. So we've got you back. Not that you weren't back, but you're going to be the lead for OBS Talk. I'm super excited about that because there is no better person for that. Another thing, well, first and foremost, so let's just talk about that. I'm stoked.
No, I'm happy to be back too, and we've done a lot of different things. And sometimes when you step back from something for a while because you've got other projects, and you realize, hey, that was kind of fun, and we got to meet a lot of people and talk to a lot of people. So I'm happy to be back, and also happy to start looking. Let's find somebody else that can do it with me, and find a couple other people that want to. If you think you want to do this and you have a knowledge of the trucks and not just the history of it, but even like current day stuff, then reach out to us and let us know because we're looking for some more people.
Yeah, so super excited and lucky to have Mark. But we know we between Mark and myself, it just there's just not enough time. So I've got to really make sure I'm taking care of C10. So if you're out there, you're listening, you're tuning in, you've got the gift to gab, you've got tech, you could say I don't have the tech, but I love the trucks, I love the history, and I love to talk to people and I love to interview them. Or hey, I love the tech and maybe I don't want to talk to everybody about it, but I'd love to talk tech. Figure out what you're good at, what you want to do, and if you want to come on board Truck Talk Media, especially obviously 88s, 98s, you think you've got what it takes. Again, you don't have to be an expert, but yeah, we could use probably one or two more guys, and we are going to, I guess, interview. We're going to make sure the best way to do an interview, Mark and I were talking about this yesterday, is by putting you on the pod. So let's get you on a pod as a guest. And then if we're like, dude, that guy was really good, let's get him back and see if he wants to get behind the mic. Some people like it when we're asking the questions and we're leading the show. And then when you say, hey, what do you think about being a host? They're like, I'll try it. And they're maybe not that good. So we can help you. We can help you get good and we can help you. So let's see what happens with that. But either way, with Mark being the lead and me pestering him and him pestering other people, we're going to really work to have the changes that you're going to see are pod every other week. I'll let Mark pick the day to drop it. I used to always try to do OBS on Wednesday, which means that they usually probably went out on Thursday and Friday because I'm always behind. But we're also going to have a full-time editor. So somebody who the guys will get the pod to the editor will get the pod out, and then we'll be able to move and shake. So the goal for 2024 and thereon after is a minimum of a pod every other week, and then even having Mark fill in on the off weeks. So whether that's Mark and me yapping, whether I might fill in, and we're talking 10 to 20 minutes of, whether for I can just tell you for C10, it's probably going to be Ronnie's rants. For Mark, it can be talking about what he's working on, a vendor, a new product, something that, hey, I'm going to this truck show. I'm excited. We've got this coming out. This is going on, introducing this new part from this company, really a 10 to 15 minute where we'll have that and we'll continue to push pod out. So you should have a new OBS Talk episode really almost every week. So obviously some months there's a 5 month or a 5 week month, and you're not going to get it. We got to have a break every now and then, but really, if it's not just a full on pod hosted by either Mark, myself, or maybe somebody new, and then a little bit of a filler as well. So it should be good. And LMC's back as our title, which is always good when you can ask your title hey, do you want to come back? And they say yes, then that means they're they know that we're taking care of them, and that's a huge thing on me to chase the money to make sure we're bringing you guys the pod.
Well, yeah, and since you mentioned LMC, we can't go wrong. Like they're on speed dial over here, so they have so many great parts for the trucks. It's a really a great resource for everybody. So we're so happy to have them as a sponsor, and happy to have them doing what they do, because we really need them, and it's really helping with everything they're doing. So
Well, and I remember too, even when we started the pod, it was like I remember I don't remember exactly. I think I remember who the company was, but they were like, "Hey, this is a weird time. Our catalog, this is not LMC. I think it was I want to say it was Classic Industries or something. But they were saying this is a weird time as our 88 to 98 catalog is getting smaller." And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, we're at a weird time. And I think I conveyed this on the pod previously, but he's like, where the OE stuff is running out and we're not able to get it from, said GM at this point. And so I can't get product for my catalog through the manufacturer, and the aftermarket isn't getting dialed up. So let's just say this is 19. Well, it's pretty crazy to think that now we're getting to that point where the aftermarket and even some of the OGs are, getting their old dies out and thinking, okay, how do I make this? And you've got companies like LG Billet that are jumping in, and you've got other old companies that are like, hey, we need to start making that again because these trucks are hotter than hot, and the aftermarket is starting to step up and take over where the OEs is now done and doesn't care anymore.
no, for sure. And there has been, just in the last year, really, when you look at what's come out for parts, it's incredible. And look what Randy at Spare Time Billet's doing with all his billet parts too. And just amazing, making he's making stuff that we couldn't get back in the day, the full vents in the factory configuration. Those things are freaking cool. They look good and they're a quality piece. And so, yeah, we're lucky now that manufacturing has gotten a lot easier. In reality, is something that's really helped us a lot, doing machining and 3D printing and doing all that kind of stuff. We can bring some of this stuff back, and we can bring it back on small quantities. And if people want it, then, away we go. If they don't want it, well, then we'll still keep making ones. That's all.
Exactly. It's funny. I have a little piece of paper on my desk for the audience, and it has the kind of the birthday for each pod, like when the first pods were dropped. And for OBS, it was dropped December 4th of 2019. So December 4th of 2023 was the 4-year anniversary. So we are in the 5th year, if you think about it. So 4 years are done. We're in the 5th year. And yeah, when that started, obviously it was kind of a little subsidiary of C10. And I think I did 3 or 4. And I said, okay, I'm going to play with this. And Mark was one of the guys. But it's funny to think, 4 or 5 years later, now these trucks are hotter than hot, and the pod's still going strong. So some big changes. I think big changes, but more of the same. Where things will. It's really about finding the builders, finding the content, having a good time, making sure that when people are working on their trucks in their shop, in their garage, in their carport, under the tree, that they can tune in to OBS Talk. They can listen to Mark's voice, the beautiful voice that it is, and really just find you guys the interviews. So if you think you have what it takes to be a host, if you think you've got something that we should talk about from the guest perspective, products, trucks, builds, shows, we're in. There's going to be a lot. The other thing too is there's a lot more shows than there used to be. It was pretty much good guys and LST Dinos, and now there's a new show popping up just on the daily. So we've got some really good shows to hit this year. I know Craig Raleigh is got Battle in Bama, and they're moving that to Talladega this year. So that's got the OBS Nationals is what he's calling it, and that is a simultaneous show. So it's a show within a show where they're going to have Battle in Bama, but they're going to have that OBS section. And I think Chris does a lot with that with CK Syndicate too. So he does a lot there. So a lot of good things happening in 2024 and really in the future for the OBS trucks.
Oh, I think so too. And it's only a couple weeks away from the legendary Grand National Roadster Show. So we'll be over there for the weekend, and that would be amazing. And then the Grand National Truck Show. which actually had some OBS trucks in it this year, the inaugural show in Pomona, and had some really nice OBSs there. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a great show year, and excited to see what send us what you're building. Send it over to us. Let us know what you're building and show us what it is, so that we can follow along. Especially if you're building something different and cool, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, and so for the audience, if you're looking at, hey, where do I send it? You can either go Ronnie at Truck Talk Media, pretty easy, RONNIE at trucktalkmedia.com, or you can go Mark at obsbuilder.com. Pretty easy, obsbuilder.com, and send either one of us or send it both to us. You can hit us up on the socials as well, the DM, and that's probably about the easiest way to track us down. But just know that we're going to be kicking ass. I've already talked to Mark about, hey, who's on your list? And before I know it, I got 10 names and 10 trucks and 10 ideas on different things. And hey, let's say you don't have or think you have what it takes to maybe be a host. Well, you might be a guy who's like, hey, here's 3 ideas or topics or trucks being built in my area. Or, we've got a lot of eyes out there. Maybe you're going to a show and you're like, dude, I would love to try to cover a show that's way out east, because obviously Mark and I are both in Arizona, right on Cali's edge. And, it's hard for us to always get to Texas or Oklahoma, or, all the way out to Nashville or to Tennessee, to Knoxville, to the East Coast. So if you've got something, we're here to just really open this up and let people know what's going on in the 88 to 98 CK world that we live in, and really just bring you guys the best content, uh, consistent content, and just be part of the community.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, yeah. So any other, fun ideas that you have for 2024 as you take on this lead role?
Well, basically, like I said earlier, I'd just like to see what people are doing. Like, just reach out to us and let us know what you're doing. And if you're doing something cool mechanical, we're a little heavier into the body and paint end of it than we are mechanical. Like, we do all our own mechanical, obviously, but if you've got something that can help somebody that's doing an LS swap at home or doing an LT swap at home, or there's been a little bit of a switch in the industry too. When you look at some of the chassis manufacturers, that they've switched over to using OEM parts, late model OEM parts on their chassis. And that's a really interesting scenario, because you're providing somebody with something that's maybe not as cosmetically appealing, but a lot more usable and a lot more withstanding. So if you're somebody that I had a guy reach out to me the other day about rear disc brakes on an OBS, and those are pretty documented, but there's ways to do it. There's a couple guys that have done it using all Napa stuff. They've done it for no money at all. It's just incredible. So if you're one of those guys that's come up with that kind of stuff, like front drive radiators, electrical, problem solving, like, reach out to us so that we can learn and share that information with people. Because I think that's, the OBS is still a lot of stuff that people are building at home on their own. It's still there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of them sitting in pro shops right now. There's a few kicking around, but a lot of them are still being built at home in that. So let's see what you're building.
Yeah, and I'd love to see some chassis stuff, because I think the chassis of an OBS truck is still, a great chassis and a great platform to start things with. So yeah, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Let us know, because the more we know, the better we can share with the community and make the community better as a whole, really, is what it comes down to.
Well, I think too, the big thing, we've already had, we had Power Tour West, and that was a blast, and I think that's the other thing is, who's driving, who's going somewhere. We've got the reunion coming up, and then, obviously the Grand National Truck Show. And so, who's driving to these shows. It's kind of funny, because we drive our stuff, and people look at, like, everything I've got stone chipped, because we drive it. We're not afraid. If get out there and roll in it. Send us pictures of it rolling and driving. That's what I want to see. If you find some cool place to stop and take a picture, then do that, because that's what this is all about. Like, that's the most fun of all, is driving. I drove Brickyard to work yesterday, and it's just, I don't know, it's just something about it. Like, it's one thing to have them sitting in the corner, but it sure is a lot more fun to drive them.
Well, and it's fun to hear a guy at the fruit stand or the fruit custom say, those were the times. That's just a
Yeah.
just a great feeling of making you realize, like, oh yeah, sometimes you might just be driving your truck and you don't even realize it, and you're like, oh yeah, I am driving this truck today, and this really makes me, makes me feel so good. I remember, I'll never forget my whole entire life, and I don't think my son will ever forget either. But the first year I took Yellowstone to Dino's, my son was in the sitting shotgun, and this guy, we take a turn, and this guy's on the corner, and he just yells, "That is fucking rad." And my son, I look over at my son, and he's just like, at the time, he might be like 12 or something. And he was just, grinning ear to ear. And you forget when you're sitting there, you're like, yeah, I am in something rad. And it's a good feeling. You get that feedback, and you get that feedback from somebody who has, has no skin in the game. And you're like, yeah, that makes me feel really good. Or how many times we hear somebody gets their truck done, or they're working on their truck, and they take it to the gas station, and they can't even get out of there without three people trying to talk to them about their build, their truck, their process, and what they're doing.
Oh, that's the thing, and that, like, again, that's the funnest part for me is being out driving around, and it's kind of funny because when we had to move and we had to get all our titles sorted and all that stuff, and kind of a little busted on how many trucks we actually have now because it's kind of hard to hide them all in one spot. But I realized going through, I've been working on a book and trying to put pictures together and stuff. I've had that Beltec truck for 10 years. I bought that 10 years ago. And so it's kind of I didn't realize it was that long, that I had had it that long.
But you're talking about the
And
tribute truck.
the tribute truck,
Wow.
like we did
Yeah.
it as a tribute truck in 19, but I've had
Yeah.
it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I remember the day we saw it because we were driving around the subdivision looking at houses with my Cromer, and it was on the side of the road for sale. And I stopped and looked at it. And my wife's like, "You're not buying that." And I said, "No, don't worry about it. I'm not going to buy it." And so the next day I sent the Cromer to buy it. So he bought it. And he dropped it off at our house.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't buy
Yeah.
it.
Patty's like,
you know,
I thought I told you not to buy it. You're like, no, you did. I didn't. I didn't buy it. But
I
yeah.
didn't. No,
Yep.
Steve bought it,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
but 10 years. So like I started thinking about that, and like, you think about, like, I've never ever thought of selling it, never ever thought of doing anything different with it. Like, it's just here, it's just around, and it's just going to be around forever probably. And because it's just so fun to drive and stuff like that. So that's why I want to see people out enjoying their stuff. And if you're going on power tour, let us know. And they just released the dates this morning for the next power tour, for the summer power tour. So it looks like a good route. So that'll be kind of cool. So yeah, just let us know what you're doing. Let's have fun.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I think we'll take it out on that is if you can get two of your buddies, so there's 3 to 4 of you total, and you can just have yeah, well, Mark's gonna buy that, Steve's gonna buy that, Chuck's gonna buy that, and then Ronnie will buy that. And it's like, no, I'm not buying it, babe. I promise you I'm not buying it. And then next thing you know, your buddy buys it, and it's just like, all right, we gotta square up on this because I've got this much in trucks I bought for you, and you've got this much in trucks you bought for me. And yeah, little nice little co-op to work out, buying each other's shit for one another.
Yeah, no, it's I've been told that I need to stop, but again, like we talked about earlier, I'll stop when the time's right, or I'm not ever going to stop when the deal's right.
That's right.
There's
Yeah,
no way.
I'm saving so much money, I'm going broke. That's exactly what it is. So, all right, we'll take you guys out with that. Remember to stay obsessed. It's really what it's all about. Some really good changes coming for 2024. Expect pod, again every other week, a full episode, some fillers in between. We're stoked that LMC is back as our title sponsor. I don't not think that we're not going to have all the other sponsors. I'm working on that right now. Um, good pod coming your way, really, and it's only going to be as good as you want it to be. So obviously, Mark and I, you've heard our shtick and what we want for it, but we want to hear from you. So if you've got things to chat about, I'll put in the show notes. I'll put my email, I'll put Mark's email, and really I'll put LMC. Now, one thing I will tell you, if you can do me a favor, do us a favor, do Truck Talk Media a favor, is I asked LMC for a coupon code because obviously these sponsors are starting to get to where they need to track it. So they didn't give me a coupon code. I'm still working on that for you guys. I promise you a little 10%, I'm like, hey, if we can give the listener 10%, they're a little bit more willing to jump in and make sure they remember that code. Remember, for now, I just have a website link, and I'm sure that website link is tracked to obviously OBS Talk and the different podcasts that they're associated with. So if you're listening to this and you're going to buy some parts and you need some parts from LMC, hit the show link email, because that's going to go back to LMC. And I'm sure that that's why they're doing it, to track. For the OGs, it used to be, 1-800 this, and this. And that's how they would, uh, kind of look at who was calling out of what magazine. And I used to think, I'm like, well, how many numbers do you have? Because, like, let's say CPP, for example, it was like, okay, well, they have one in street trucks, they had one in trucking, they had one in classic trucks. What was the other mag? Classic truck, custom classic trucks. So we had, back in the day, there's 4 or 5 different magazines that we were getting on the regular, and you're like, what do you got, a 1-800 number for each one? And sure enough, they did, and that's how they said, well, this is how we're going to put our money into where we're going to put it. I'm still surprised that magazines get the money they do for the advertisements. I don't know. I still get magazines. I don't know that I really spend the amount of time that I used to. I mean, I took it to bed with me. Like I took magazines and I read them front to back, made sticky notes. I just don't have the time for that anymore. But nonetheless, support us by supporting the sponsors, because without the sponsors, then there is no us, and then there's no pod. So we're as good as you guys want us to be. We appreciate it. We're super stoked that Mark's taking the lead, and 2024 is going to be a good time.
Sounds good. Let's have some fun.
Okay, I'm gonna put this out probably today, because I don't even think it's gonna matter. So I've got a couple more of these to do, but that's it. So I'll take you out on that, Mark. Stay on the line, and 2024, it's gonna be a good time.